learning and insight. So, Andy, how you doing today?
Well, I think every day is an opportunity to learn and do something cool. And I think today I am excited to hear from our founder. How about you?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. We have Rebecca Clyde on today. She's co-founder and CEO of BOTCO.AI. And BOTCO.AI is an intelligent chat nurturing solution that doubles conversion rates. So I'm excited to hear about this. So let me bring Rebecca on. Hey, Rebecca, welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you are.
Good morning, good afternoon. So welcome. So awesome. Thank you for joining the show here today. I like your swag. You got the shirt promoting business, which is awesome. Great product placement. Let's just start with you giving an overview. I mean, I shared the one line that I saw on the LinkedIn company page, but tell us what BOTCO.AI is and does, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. You're exactly right. We're providing an intelligent chat solution. Right now, we're focused primarily on selling in the healthcare industry, which is really an exciting space. One of the things I get to do every single day is help healthcare providers reduce wait times and make it easier to consume their products and services. So, that's my mission every day is making it easy for families, people like you and me, to schedule appointments with our providers without having to wait on the phone forever and play phone tag.
That's really cool. I always like to start with origin story, and founders are always a little bit of superheroes for what they, do every day. But how did it get started? Where did the idea come from? And, what's your, startup story?
Yeah, it's kind of of course, when two founders meet each other, that's where the magic really happens. And the way that I met my co-founder was right here in Phoenix, where I live, at a Girls in Tech conference. So this was an international conference that was taken here by women tech leaders from all over the world. And she had forgotten, Anu Shukla is her name, she had forgotten her charger. So she was, talking to people trying to find a charger. She found me. And I let her borrow my charger. And during that time, while her phone was juicing up, we started talking. And it turned out that we had a crazy amount in common. at the time, I was running an agency, a marketing automation shop that was focused on helping large enterprises implement, Eloqua, Marketo, Salesforce, manage all of their marketing automation campaigns. And she had been previously the founder of one of the early marketing automation platforms in the 90s called Rubric. And so we had a ton in common to talk about. And one of the things that we discussed in that charging moment was that, these marketing automation platforms had not innovated and had really not kept up with the modernization of the consumer expectation out there. They were not satisfying any kind of on-demand experience. They weren't 24/7. They were asynchronous and they were old. Honestly, they were outdated. And she joked that she said, we built this product 20 years ago and literally it's the exact same stuff that they're trying to sell today in pawn-off companies. And I joked, I'm like, yeah, and they're so terrible, they have to hire companies like mine to fix them. So I'm sending my kids to college based on the, terrible products that these companies are failing to innovate upon. And so we kind of joked and said, well, we should, we're the perfect people to create the new generation of marketing automation products. And, that joke that we talked about in that moment actually became a company. And so we started meeting more frequently. She brought in one of her former co-founders, Chris Maida, who is our CTO, to build the platform. And soon we were off to the races.
That's really cool. And I love the idea, people talk about, oh, you're lucky. And I always think that it's, opportunity and preparation, and this idea that you met someone, and you've got this experience and past, and it create, it's not that you're lucky that you did anything, it's that you were in the right place at the right time and created this great connection and just this fantastic coincidence. So that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. Exactly. That's exactly right.
I'm kind of curious, how did you, I guess, go from that idea to a true product? You mentioned bringing on a CTO, but really, what did it look like, in those initial stages of trying to plan and develop a product?
Lots of slideware at the beginning, lots of just whiteboarding, drawings, slideware, diagrams. At first it was just us trying to get these ideas out of our head and turn them into a concept. Then before we even wrote a single line of code, we would take these diagrams and we would kind of faux, vaporware these products into like a really nice presentation. And we would take them into potential customers. We would say, okay, who would we want to sell this idea to? Who would be potentially the buyer of this product? And of course, Anu and I had huge Rolodexes already in the industry. And so we would just literally hit up all of our contacts and say, hey, can you have 30 minutes with me? We want to run an idea by you. We're testing out some product concepts. Can you give us feedback? And we had hundreds of these kinds of calls where we iterated and iterated and iterated upon that idea until we finally got it to where we felt like it was solid enough. And during that process, actually, a couple of companies said, hey, I know you haven't built this thing first, but I want to be your first customer. Can I pay you in advance for that product? And can we be the first in line to use it? And that's when we knew that we had something. So those first 2 contracts we got were when literally all we had was slideware. And they knew it. It wasn't a secret. They knew that it was slideware, but they wanted to be the first in line to get the product. And that's how we knew we were onto something. And they paid handsomely for it too.
That's really cool.
So that was the first customer there. That allowed you then to build the product from that point?
Yeah, exactly. We didn't take outside investment money from the beginning. It was all bootstrapped from the 3 of us. And then these kind of prepayments from customers are what helped us get through that early development stage. Then when we finally were at a point where we felt like, okay, we have a product that we have, that we can now make commercially available, that's when we started to go out and seek investment. And so, we started the process of, hitting up angels that we knew, going to all of the pitch competitions. I did 1,000 pitch competitions, it seemed like. I submitted grant applications to get money from, the state of Arizona has some really wonderful programs to support entrepreneurs. And so I submitted grant applications for all of those. And that's how we started to get outside money in to really start to build out the team and build out the company so that we could properly commercialize our product.
Now, were you guys building this while you were running your other businesses, which is, I know for some founders that try and do that, that can be extremely difficult, or did you go all in on it?
No, I went all in. I mean, at the beginning, during the first stages, when we were in the napkin phase, I call it, yes, I was still running my other company, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And as those interviews advanced and progressed, and I could see that this was starting to come together, it'd be clear that I needed to put my full 100% attention into this company. And so what I did is I started hiring my management team and elevating my team at my other company. I made a list of all the things I did. I, found new people to do everything. I worked myself out of my old job. It took about, a good 8 to 12 months to completely move off of that old role. So that I could focus 100% on the startup. And that was really key to being able to do so. There's no way we could have gotten the company to where it is today if I was trying to straddle multiple businesses.
Yeah, is that something?
I'm not as talented as Jack Dorsey, I guess,
Yeah,
right. The CEO of 2 companies at once.
Well, I do see that challenge, and I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on it, is that there are a lot of software founders that are trying to do it either out of they're in an existing job or they're running another company. Do you feel strongly that, someone should go all in if they really believe in the concept?
Yeah. I don't know how you can do that. I mean, at the very beginning, when you're just still trying to gel the idea, that's okay. Like the first couple of months. And actually my old company was very useful for accessing potential customers, for getting conversations, for testing ideas. Like it was fine for that very early incubation stage, but to really get a company off the ground and moving, that's when, you have to go all in. And so the truth is, I look back and I can exactly tell at what point I went full time, because that's when things really started to move and happen. Because as it's all about momentum. And anything that you're starting and stopping just is not going to move quickly enough. So you have to put that full energy, full mental capacity into it so that it can really take off. So I'm not a fan of the straddling concept for too long.
That's great. You mentioned pitch contests, and I'm always interested in that. And I'd love to hear insights into how you approached it, because I work with a lot of founders in helping them with pitch decks. And it's a hard process to be able to articulate what you do and create excitement and all these other pieces. How did you approach pitch decks and pitch contests and these other things?
Sure. So I kind of see my pitching as kind of a two-phased, 2 stages to it. So it was kind of like pre-Alchemist Accelerator, which is an accelerator I completed last year, and post. So before I was like formally trained on how to do these things, I read up on YouTube and I looked at stuff online and I watched other founders and I took notes from what I liked and didn't like. And I created my own version of that. But I didn't have like I don't think my pitch was that great, but it was still useful to practice. Like, I can't tell you how great it was for me to have to memorize a 3-minute version, a 5-minute version, a 10-minute version, a 15-minute version, and have slides ready to go for any one of those things. And so it got to the point where I'm like, oh, it's the 3-minute one. I can do it. I even had to do a 90-second one once. So, and I won that competition, which was actually a great prize because it came with like $100,000 in AWS credits. So it was awesome. But the whole point is that it was all about practicing and figuring out, and I would use it as a feedback opportunity to see like what landed, what didn't land, what resonated, where could I see the audience like perk up, and where could I see them kind of wilt, right? I was taking those cues very carefully, and I would take notes every time so that I could learn and get better with every single one. And my goal wasn't really to raise money. Like, I don't think I actually got any true cash from those. I got prizes, which were really great, like credits. I got tons of credits for all kinds of products and services, which was great. I met a lot of interesting people. I got to see other founders pitch, which was really, really useful. I got feedback. I got to get a sense of what kind of questions investors might ask and people would ask in the audience. It was more like a training ground for me. So that when I did go out to the big leagues, so to speak, it wasn't my first time around. I felt comfortable. I already had a good sense of how this would go and where I could, make those improvements so I could really be solid at that point. And then once I went through Alchemist Accelerator, I mean, they do a tremendous job just really training you and putting you through the ringer. And so I completely elevated my pitch at that point.
I really love the idea of it as like a training program, exercise where you're learning, and that you took it seriously and took notes, rather than other folks that may do it and just kind of, off the whim every time and not gain that knowledge, but really treating it like it's, this is a process of me learning and growing. That's really cool.
Oh yeah, and I had no expectation people were going to walk out of a pitch competition and give me cash, because that rarely happens. And I would watch these other founders say, "Oh, it's a waste of time. Don't waste your time at those pitch competitions." And I was like, "No, this is like, I consider what I do as a founder no different than an elite athlete, right? We are in a very competitive space. We have to be constantly practicing our game." And ask any elite athlete, they train every day. It doesn't matter if they're the #1 MVP in their category, they still wake up every morning and train. They don't ever stop doing that. So why would we as founders not practice every single day?
I absolutely love it.
Just to go back for a second, Rebecca, I would love to hear just from your perspective, when you did make that leap, you believed in what you were doing, and when you made the leap to full-time focusing on BOTCO.AI, what did that feel like? Was there some hesitation? Was that difficult for you to do? What was going on in your mind?
Oh, sure. It was very difficult, because the strings to the old life the threads are very strong at times. And so it's retraining people not to reach out to me constantly. It's also not feeling pulled into it, like, oh, I have to go save it or fix it if I see something going on. So mentally it requires a lot of effort to do that. I think for me, it was so exciting, and this was so much what I wanted to do that it overpowered any other emotion or feeling. And so it didn't, I made a lot of adjustments in my life, in my social circle, in my family life, in my personal life, even my financial arrangements and my personal burn rate. I had to adjust just about every aspect of my life to make this happen, like to levels that I could not have imagined before. But those were the adjustments I had to make, and that's how much I believed in what I was doing. And it was like, no problem, sure. Move into a smaller house, no problem. Drive a less expensive car, no problem. Like all of those things, I just did them because I knew that this is what I wanted to do and focus on.
Yeah, that's appreciate that you're sharing that. Would you mind elaborating more on like the friends and family, like the social aspect, people that, you might have had to move some people around in your life? I certainly understand that. What was that like?
Yeah, I had to go to my parenting partner and ask for a lot more contribution. It's really hard to try to still be doing 80% of all the household and children and doctor's appointments and PTA meetings and parent-teacher conferences and homework and bath time and, play dates and organizing every birthday party. I mean, I have 3 kids. There's no way I could do all of that still and try to do a startup at the same time. So because the level of momentum, like I said, and energy required is just tremendous. And so I had to ask a lot of people in my life to step up their game in a big way. So, I'm a big village person. I grew up in Latin America. I'm actually not from the United States. And so I'm very comfortable with family being involved in my personal life. It's a little bit different. Here in the US, people are very individualistic, but I have no problem calling up my mom and saying, Mom, I need your help for the next 2 weeks. So I got this big thing. You and Dad need to come and stay with me because I need help at home so that I can go focus on this thing. And so I relied heavily on family. I relied heavily on my siblings. My kid's dad had to step up and do way more than he was accustomed to. And that was, a new level of effort for him. And I commend him for doing that. And, just everybody had to step up. Everybody who was in my circle, friends, everybody knew, like, I'm going to ask, this is the time where I'm going to call in those favors. Remember all those times I helped you? Now it's your turn to help me because I need support. And that's in a large way why I think I've been able to be successful.
You mentioned you met your founder at a conference for women. You just kind of hinted at the whole parenting balance piece. I'm kind of curious because we've been, trying to feature female founders. How do you see the world for female entrepreneurs and startups and just kind of that the difference and what's required?
So, Anu and I always joke that the great thing about our company is our product has 2 mothers instead of a couple of dads.
It's funny.
So, if you think about the role that a mother plays, like in the rearing of a baby, which our startup was an infant for many and still is. I still think it's like a toddler. It's like a stumbling little toddler that's still bumping into things. It's like you can't just expect it to grow up by itself. It's not going to figure out how to get potty trained, right? It's not going to figure itself out how to do all these things. Like, a mother pays attention to all those details. And because the 2 of us are mothers, she has 2 kids, I have 3 kids, we're really good at the mothering thing. And literally we treated our startup like we would treat a child in a lot of senses, understanding developmentally what's appropriate, right? That's the other thing is like with a company, you have to know what's developmentally appropriate when you're a 6-month-old company versus a 6-year-old company. They're totally different things. And so you parent differently depending on the age of the child. You provide different levels of support. You know what the next milestone is, and so you're preparing them for that next milestone. Like, hey, you're going to start kindergarten soon. It's time for you to learn to tie your shoelaces, right? So it's that same mindset that we took into essentially rearing our startup that we did with our parenting. And so I think that's probably where the biggest difference might have come. I don't know. I haven't been a father, so I can't speak to the experience from that point of view, but I can speak to mine as a mother.
I love it. I love what you just said because I think, I have to compare and contrast, the founders that I've met that are 22-year-old men that have never had children and have a different mindset. and how they probably approach a startup versus, like you said, and whether you're a man or a woman, that parenting mindset. I have 2 kids myself. I just love that like viewpoint on it as a business, as a startup, as a living, breathing thing that you have to go through stages with. That's awesome.
Right. Like you wouldn't expect a 2-year-old to be able to do things that a 7-year-old can do, right? As a parent that those things are not the same. And so the same thing with your company, but you have to be thinking like, what's the next stage? What do we need to be preparing for? What's coming around the corner? And, the great thing about my co-founder, she's done 5 companies. And so she is intimately familiar with these stages. And so I would always ask her like, okay, what's next? You've done this software startup thing before. What do we need to be preparing for? And she was so great about coaching me around those different things so that I could prepare. She's like, hey, listen, these investors that you're talking to, they're going to want to talk to our customers. So you need to be preparing customers way in advance for how they're going to talk to your investors when they do that reference call. And so, when that happened, when the investor said, hey, I need to do reference calls, I'm like, yep, they're ready. Like, I already prepared them. So call them. You can talk to them today if you need. I don't need to do any pre-work because they already knew this was coming. I've been preparing them for this moment. Call them today. No problem. And the investors are like, whoa, usually we get a little pushback on that. And I'm like, no, I knew you were going to ask. We're ready. So that's the difference. It's like we're anticipating what's around the corner and preparing everybody so that when we get there, we're not scrambling.
Yeah.
What are some of the other advantages? I think that's great that your co-founder has the experience along, the founder journey. What else would you say about that experience has been beneficial to you guys?
I would say she and I are kind of like that. Well, Chris also has done a bunch of companies, so he too brings this perspective. But they get to be the I call them the jaded ones in the room, right? They've seen all the dirty tricks, right? They know all of the games that are played, and so they see right through it, right? And I was still kind of that naive, like, oh, but they said this, and they're like, yeah. I've heard that phrase before, like, the check is in the mail, right? And so they know all the tricks. They know all of the games. They know all the lies. They know all of the, the subtext that what they really mean when they say blank is blank, is something else. And so they were providing me with that kind of dictionary, the interpretive guide to like, don't necessarily take what somebody told you at face value. Think about A, B, and C. Maybe double check this, look into that first. And I still made some of the naive first time errors. Of course I did. I believed a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have, or I misunderstood what people said because I didn't understand the subtext truly. But I'm getting better at that. And fortunately, they're always there to remind me, like, and so I always check with them. So-and-so said this. What does that really mean? Am I hearing it correctly? Am I missing something here? Is there an underlying meaning here that I'm just not catching? What else should I understand about this? And they're very great about helping me navigate some of those landmines.
I'm kind of curious, how do you and the other co-founders balance roles and responsibilities in the business, as well as come to, decisions, big decisions about direction and how you're, going to grow the business and the product?
Yeah, we have religious founder meetings twice a week that we cannot miss. So even if we're on vacation, we call into the founder meeting. So that's like I said, it's a protected piece of time that we do not relinquish for anything. So that's number one. Number two, in terms of the roles, I kind of see it as it's easy. Chris is a CTO, so he's of course overseeing the architecture and the development of the product from a technology point of view. My job as the CEO, my number one job is to make sure there's always money in the bank to accomplish everything we need to accomplish. So that's my job, right? Is make sure we have money. So that means I'm the one talking to investors. I'm the one making sure we're getting big contracts with customers. That's really, I'm here to provide the oxygen and the lifeblood of the company. And then also because I was a former kind of customer of ours in a sense, I can provide my insight into the product. Although now we have a great product manager, so I don't have to do that job anymore, thank goodness, because I much rather have a professional product manager than me kind of fumbling my way through it. And Anu, she is fantastic. She's like the catch-all of everything else. So like, you know, when we had to run our HIPAA compliance and do all of our, get our SOC 2 stuff going, she project managed that whole thing. You know, she helps screen all of our resumes and only brings me the great candidates, right? So I don't have to go through all these resumes or pay an expensive recruiter to do that. She's running all of our kind of marketing strategy right now, our go-to-market strategy, and making sure we have a great PR program, a great demand generation program. And so she's kind of filling in all of those gaps because, you know, as a CEO, it's like when you're fundraising, that's all you can do. When you're selling, that's all you can do, right? These are single-minded efforts that have to, that really require all of your focus. You can't be like scattered all over the place. So she allows me to do that, and she kind of fills in all the other gaps that are, you know, plenty, trust me. So it's been great. I think we have a really good, I would say, distribution of responsibilities between us.
What's the rest of the team look like, you know, now, and how has it changed since you guys, you know, really founded the business?
Well, we really have a, you know, many more people for one thing. So, you know, we're a 20-person company now. And so that means we have like, you know, an engineering team. It's not just a couple of engineers anymore, right? We have a whole engineering team. That's about half of the company right there. And then I kind of call it like the commercial side of the business and the technical side of the business. And then some people that kind of straddle both in between. So, yeah, we have, you know, a sales team, an engineering team, a marketing team now, and a tiny little product team. So we look like a proper company now. We're not so individual anymore. We're not so small.
What is the culture that you guys have built within the business? What does that look like? How intentional have you been about that? That's an area that we always love hearing from founders on.
Yeah, so I love that you asked that question. You know, we're actually a remote first company, and this was built in this way. There's a couple of things that I feel like are really part of our DNA. Number one is that the three founders were in 3 different cities. Anu is in Fremont, I'm in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Chris is in Toronto. So from day one, we were a remote company. And pre-COVID, everybody I talked to was like, oh, that will never work. You're never going to be able to be successful if you're a remote company. You know, we heard all the stories of how it was impossible to be a remote company and be successful. But then when March 2020 happened and everybody was freaking out and didn't know what to do and didn't even have Zoom subscriptions and didn't know how to use Slack and, you know, all of those things, had no clue how to be remote, we were like, no sweat off our back. Like this was another day in the life of BOTCOAI. It was no big deal. So we didn't waste any time trying to figure out those things. And we were fine. You know, we had one of our best sales months in April, right? When everybody else was still like having existential crises. So, you know, we didn't, so I would say that's number one. So we've already figured out how to deal with collaboration remotely. Because we're a remote first company, we have people all over, you know, from many different cultures. And so we're already a very multicultural company to begin with. And we celebrate that multicultural background. And then the 3 founders, we're multicultural. You know, Chris is, you know, his mom is from the Midwest and his dad is from Japan, you know, so he was raised in a multicultural household. So was I. You know, I was raised in Latin America with an American father, but a Central American mother and outside of the US. So, and then Anu also, she was raised in India, but then studied in the US. So all of us have this like international melting pot already flowing through our veins as it is. And so we're perfectly comfortable working with developers, engineers, DevOps people, product people, no matter where they come from. We can appreciate many different cultures and many different backgrounds, and we love it. So I would say that kind of defines us from the get-go. And I kind of alluded to diversity too as being part of our DNA and part of our culture is, you know, of course, having 2 female founders and having so many international, you know, genetics running through us as it is. You know, we are just more in tune with different things. If you think about, they've always said people who speak different languages or who are native speakers in multiple languages are generally going to have different kinds of creative processes and problem-solving approaches, because we can think of things from a different cultural point of view and from different perspectives much more easily. And so because the three of us have straddled multiple languages from our birth, we also have the capacity to think about problems, challenges from many points of view. And I think this is really what's at the core of BOTCOAI, is our ability to understand and quickly appreciate new and different points of view. And so, how does this translate into everyday work? It's, being able to be cohesive as a team, collaborate remotely, really dig in with customers to try to understand their problems and what their pain points are, empathizing with those pain points, and then building a great product that helps them support those pain points.
We just had a conversation with a founder the other day, and I'm kind of a big believer that the word culture means a little bit different things to everybody. I'm just kind of curious to start asking founders, what does culture mean to you? How would you define culture for a company?
Right. I think of it as the DNA that runs through our veins. Like, what is that guiding force within each of us? And unfortunately, I think because of the whole Silicon Valley thing, people started thinking about culture as, craft beer and ping pong tables and video games. But when you're a remote company like us, those things don't matter, right? How am I going to do that? How am I going to send craft beer to everybody's desk? I mean, we try to, we're going to have a Cinco de Mayo thing where we're trying to ship stuff to everybody, and it's complicated. But, that's not going to define our culture. Our culture is really who do we show up as in that moment of truth? That's what culture is. And to me, it's, do we have the ability to think from the customer's point of view? Do we have the ability to have an open mind about a problem or a situation? And can we truly, truly embrace the occasion that we have to rise to in that moment? To me, that is what culture is. And if a company and the people who we are hiring can't rise to that occasion and can't show up in that way, in those critical moments of truth, then that's when our culture is weak or doesn't exist or has failed us.
Have you ever had anybody on the team that hasn't, fit with the culture, and how did you, handle that?
It's really interesting. Those people tend to self-select themselves out. They show up and they realize that a lot is expected here. This is not an easy ride. There's nowhere to hide. When you're in an early stage startup, it's not like you can hide behind a team or a bunch of the work that other people did. And in 5 minutes, it's easy to realize where the problem is. And often they kind of let themselves out the door. I don't even have to do anything. That's how you know you have a good culture, I think. Right.
And you mentioned, I want to explore, and you kind of talked about it a little bit, but I agree with you. We're mostly remote, and we used to be all in an office, and we're really going to dive into the remote work piece. And that idea of we used to have an air hockey table and a skee ball, and these things that now don't matter. How do you see building a culture in a remote environment?
Right. I think the biggest thing is making sure that we're still spending time together, whether it's on Zoom or Slack, that we're still connecting with each other, right? That's super important. We can't let people just be islands and feel abandoned and unsupported. And so, I think there's a little bit of, some people just they think, well, let me just try to solve this myself. I don't want to burden other people. And it's usually coming from a good place. But one of the things we really reach out proactively and make sure, hey, don't deal with this problem alone. Team effort is always going to trump individual effort. So, in fact, I just had a one-on-one with one of the members of my team who I coached on this exact topic. I'm like, don't go this problem alone. Number one, pull in people. Think about who here in the company has experience or skills or perspectives that could help you. Tap into them, please. Never try to go it alone. That's the number one thing. And so making sure that people have trust in each other, feel comfortable reaching out, feel comfortable asking for help, that's where the magic happens. If that is not happening, if people don't feel like they can reach out and they can get help from the team, that's when things, in my opinion, can start to fall apart.
What do you think about the remote trend? Do you think we're going to see that continue and more people embrace it? I do, and I have. So I'm curious, what do you see with how people are going to continue the work moving forward?
I don't see how we're going back to not being remote. One of the most fantastic things is that, we have done most of our hiring in our company during this period after March 2020. So I have not even personally met 2/3 of the company. And that's the new reality. And I may never meet some of these people. Who knows, right? Like, we don't know. I still can't go to Canada. I have a huge team in Canada, and their border is still closed. I still cannot visit them. I have not met my VP of engineering. I have not met my product manager. I have not met my UX designer in person. I have not met half of my developers. But we get along great, and I love them, and I talk to them every day, and we have an amazing relationship. And that, I don't know why I would not have that. Like, why would I not choose the best product manager in the world, no matter where she or he might be, right? Why would I go back to only picking somebody who happens to live in my zip code or in my geographic area? And I just think that idea that you have to be physically located in one place to work together is just no longer, I never thought it was true to begin with, but it's especially not true now.
It's funny. We have an employee that has been, working with us for 7 months, and about a month ago, we met for a client in another city. And I joked, I'm like, well, is it a wave? Is it a handshake? Is it a hug? Because I've known you for 7 months and interacted with you, but this is the first time we'll be in person. So it's interesting, but I'm totally on board with you.
Yeah, I just don't think, there's still a beauty to cities and people living close together. I do love to get together. We're still trying to plan lunches every couple of weeks with the team, the micro teams that still are in the same cities. We try to encourage people where it's possible to get together. But in some countries, and this is the other thing, is we tend to be, again, because I grew up outside of the US, I have typically a different point of view on these things, but we think that everything is great here in the US because stuff is open and restaurants are open and the beaches are lively and spring break is happening. This is something that is very unique to the United States. We're having this kind of first world advantage of, the vaccine rollout here having gone well. But I have colleagues in India, I have colleagues in Canada, and their world looks very different than ours. And so I think we have to be mindful of the fact that in the United States, we're kind of in a little bit of a bubble right now. And we need to be empathetic to the fact that, some of our team members are not having it quite as jolly as we are right now. And so I try to think about the world from their point of view, not just what does it look like here in Arizona, which is like a party out there. No, right. I have coworkers, I have team members that are not having that situation where they live. And I have to be very mindful. I need to be very supportive. And, we just have to be there for each other during this time and not think that our experience is everybody's experience.
Shifting gears a little bit to the product, I think the whole idea of, the more conversational type dialogue that can be powered by bots using AI, I think that's fascinating. I think there's a ton of potential there. Where do you see that trend, going in the next 5 years, let's say? Yes,
and that was one of the, I hate to put silver lining on terrible things, but COVID, the healthcare industry and so many of these industries have really dragged their feet on digital engagement. They had a million excuses of why it could never happen in healthcare or in some of these industries. And as a result, there was very little innovation that took place. There was very little investment that went into those categories. And there was a lot of a dismissiveness about that industry really advancing. And the fact that we kind of were open to supporting the healthcare industry during that time, and the fact that we kind of went in and said, hey, we see you have a problem, we have a great product. And I actually got a lot of pull from that industry, because a lot of the reason we ended up there was because people were calling me saying, please, can we use your product? And so we quickly got our HIPAA compliance and all of that stuff going so we could support their industry. But, you know, we have to think about the future. I mean, I don't know, you mentioned, Andy, that you have some kids, and every time I make a healthcare appointment, which is a lot with my kids, between the physical, the annual physical, the immunizations, the dentist appointment, the orthodontist appointment, the specialist appointment, the therapy, the, you know, whatever, the 35 things that each kid has. Sometimes I call and it's a 45-minute wait to talk to somebody. And I'm busy, and so are all the other moms I know. I don't know a single mom that's not busy like crazy. Why is the system still forcing us to wait on hold for 45 minutes to make an appointment? It's ridiculous, especially when we know that all of that system is sitting in a software product at an EHR that literally a receptionist is answering your phone, typing, and looking up, like all stuff that can be handled through API calls, all of it. And so we're basically just bashing through that barrier and saying, let's connect the parents, the families who need to make these appointments directly into those systems of record so that they can put in their request, get the appointment they're looking for, or get whatever information they need, whether it's insurance verification, or maybe it's a referral, or just a recommendation about what they need to do next. You know, because these systems, all this information is locked up in these systems that have been closed off to consumers. And so, you know, we believe that when we can open up those systems and make them accessible, we're going to make the healthcare industry and all of the other industries that have the same issue more productive. We're going to unlock tremendous amounts of value for the consumer, for the families. We're going to make these products easier to consume, more accessible. And in the end, it's about creating better outcomes for everybody. Healthier families, happier families, individuals that can get access to the help they need immediately, not have to wait 3 months because they're playing phone tag and getting stuck in some queue, which I find to be ridiculous. So the genie is not going back in the bottle. These innovations have kicked off. They're moving forward. Companies that don't adopt them will just be left behind, and new ones will come in and replace them. And that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, very cool. So what's it like building an AI product? You know, how do you think about that and approach it? Because I think, you know, for most of America, we're software people and we're in tech, but AI is kind of this black box idea. So as a founder, what, you know, even from a non-technical standpoint, what's it like approaching building something with the mindset of AI?
You know, I just think about the first thing you always have to do is, and I'm sure you've done this in every other software you've built, is like, what is the current process today? So if I am calling my healthcare provider to schedule my annual checkup, what is happening there? So, you know, I pick up the phone, I call, I wait on hold for 45 minutes. Somebody finally answers the phone, you know, after I've had to listen to the same message 35 times. And then maybe I hang up because I get tired or I need to go do something else, since I have to call 4 times before I finally get through. But okay, I finally get through to somebody, and you know, the first thing they ask you, what's your date of birth? And all they're doing is typing in your date of birth into a screen. They're accessing a scheduling system. They're typing in your date of birth. What insurance are you on? What's your group plan? You know, they're asking you all these questions. They're literally just typing them into a form, into a field. And then, you know, boom, they can see, oh, are you an existing patient? Are you not? Is this your first time? They can see all of that. Oh, you're looking for your annual checkup. Have you been in before? You know, they pretty much already know that because they can see, you know, they're just asking you a series of questions and looking inside their system of record and seeing where they're going to fit you in. And then they're like, oh, the next availability with XYZ doctor, do you want the first available or do you want a specific doctor, right? They always ask you that. Usually I say first available. And then they're like, okay, first available appointment for XYZ checkup is, you know, May 3rd at 3 p.m. Do you want the appointment or not? Like, that's pretty much all they tell you, right? They don't give you all the options. They just tell you next available. And you say, okay, and then they book you for that appointment. And then, you know, they send you some paperwork to fill out, right? That's pretty much, sorry, I got into a lot of detail, but that's pretty much the process. Just about everything I just described can be automated through software. And so that is what we are doing. So we're thinking about each of those steps, breaking them down, and then saying, where can software come in? And the AI piece is challenging because it's all about the intent. So if you think about that conversation that takes place when the person on the line says, what is your date of birth? I may say 4/28/21. I may say, whatever. I may use numbers or I may use dates. And so the thing that humans can do so well is understand information and interpret it, right? Even if it's given to us in many different formats. And so AI comes in right there, right? How do I understand the myriad of ways that a person might describe a date, a birthday, right? And that's the AI, is understanding all of those different ways and then building into the system the ability to interpret and to classify those variations, so that when somebody says, July 3rd or 7/3, we know that the system can still understand it.
It's funny, as you were describing that, as a parent, I was picturing, the before is Zootopia with the sloth that's like slowly pressing a button every time, somebody asks something. So that's kind of the old way, but why, when, we can move so fast and change what we're doing? Where do you see, where do you see the bot industry going? And how do you see 3 years from now people utilizing this type of technology to change and improve their lives?
Right. So, there's two sides of the coin, right? One is really around efficiency. Like, how do we make this easier and more accessible, right? No matter, and it doesn't just have to be in the healthcare industry. I'm describing that one because it's very top of mind, but it can be in any product or service that you consume. How do we make it more accessible? How do we reduce the friction in terms of accessing those services, whether you're trying to book a vacation for your family or take them to a doctor's appointment, right? You're still having to do that tedious effort on both sides. So there's that, there's the efficiency and the ease of use that we focus on. But more importantly, I like to think about, how does this help elevate the experience? How do we make better products and services as a result of that? And that is the gold mine here, really. When our providers and our customers use our product, the number one thing they tell us is they're like, yeah, it's great. You're helping us get more appointments, improve our profitability, reduce cycle times, all those wonderful things, efficiencies. We're getting a lot of efficiency. But the thing that we're getting that we didn't realize we were getting was a window into the heart and soul of our consumer that we never had before. And I'm like, tell me more about that. They're like, hey, we're understanding that people are asking for things that we had never even thought to provide. They're literally telling us. And before, all of that was in a sieve, like nothing of it was being captured. So when somebody would say on the phone, oh, by chance, do you provide XYZ service? And the receptionist would be like, no, none of that was being captured. Nobody knew, nobody was collecting that data and making it accessible to management and saying, hey, we're getting a lot of questions about A, B, or C. We should really consider offering after hours, weekend appointments. We had one customer that told us, we had no idea so many people had acne, were calling us with their acne concerns, and we had never marketed our services around acne. And now we know people think about acne when they're calling us, and now we can introduce a whole new line of services that addresses that need. And so that is the biggest benefit, is because of a product like ours, customers, the providers and the businesses that use us can elevate their experience, can elevate their products, can create and introduce new lines of service that they didn't even know that their customers wanted or were needing, because they were unaware, they weren't listening. And now for the first time, they can see it, they can address it, and they can deliver a better experience for all of us.
Very cool.
So Rebecca, what do you see as kind of the roadmap, the plan for like the next, let's say the next year, so the next 12 months, and where you guys are going to go?
Sure. I mean, right now we're just focused on putting like one foot in front of the other, right? We have lofty goals for our world domination plan that's out there, but you can't get there in one shot, right? It's all about just that. What's the next thing we need to add to our roadmap? What's the next customer we need to bring on? What's the next hire we need to make to help us build this great team? And so, we kind of break down those big lofty goals into small, achievable, quarterly, monthly, weekly attainments, and we're just kind of like, chipping away at it day at a time. So I would say, for us, the big thing is really focusing on breaking into some of those bigger EHR systems that can often be, very, very, I would say, closed. We're trying to open up the healthcare industry, open up that world so that it can become more accessible. There's a lot of, I would call it old school thinking in healthcare IT that we have to come up against. Fortunately, there's also a lot of innovators in there. And I always say, if more of these healthcare IT people were moms, they would have broken down those barriers a long time ago, because they're the ones experiencing the pain point on the other side of waiting on hold 45 minutes every time they have to make a health appointment. So we need to subject more of those people to consume their own champagne, so to speak, so that they can understand the urgency of the problem.
How has customer acquisition evolved, and how do you guys do it today? Because you mentioned in the beginning you did a lot of phone calls and you're reaching out to people and you got customers ahead of time for the slideware. But how has that evolved and changed? Have you had to build a sales team? Do you focus on marketing? Are you as the CEO still out there pounding the pavement and making it happen?
Yeah, all of the above. So exactly what you said, Andy. No, it's exactly right. I mean, we have a set of segments that we know need our help right now, and that have told us, like, we need your product. Our industry needs your product. We want your product. These are segments that have funding and budget and interest in our solution. And so we can go in and have really great, successful sales conversations with them. So we have a very clear view of those different segments within healthcare, because healthcare is so big, you couldn't tackle the whole thing at once. So we have to be micro-focused, and we know who those targets are. And we have very rich conversations with them. We actually have a webinar tomorrow with a great organization that's in the senior health space, which is a very growing, strong industry. And they're going to be talking about how they use our product to help them grow their census. So, we're doing just phone call outreach. We're doing a lot of LinkedIn outreach. We're doing a lot of content. Provide our customers with helpful information that can serve their business. I always like to give first before asking. And so we're constantly thinking about, what can we offer the industry of value so that they can do a better job every single day. And so, that's where our marketing and our content marketing program really comes in. And then, I can't go to live events because most of them have been canceled, but I love to speak at different webinars, events, conferences. There are a couple of things happening. There's a group of women in health IT that are putting on these races all across the country. So I'm participating in that. It's a fantastic group. Clubhouse is the new gathering place. So I spend a lot of time in Clubhouse with my community there. And I often just drop in to listen. I want to listen to what my customers are talking about, what is on their mind, what is their pain point, what issues are they struggling with. So for me, that's one of the best places to just get educated on, where they need help. Because if I don't understand that, and if I don't understand the pain point, and if I don't understand what problems they're grappling with every single day, then we can't show up with great products for them. That's not how it works.
I think it's interesting. You owned a marketing agency prior to this.
Yeah.
What would you say for early stage founders that are just getting started that they should think about as the priority for marketing or exposure for the company? As that insight of the marketing agency owner and now a founder that has grown a company, for those early stage folks, what would you say?
For me, it goes back to building a community and building a village, right? So I believe that the best companies are the ones that have been able to successfully create communities and build communities or tap into other communities. So I always think about, how are you using social media? How are we using even our business communities that we reside in more effectively to give and to get, right? So how am I showing up? And I have invested my entire career in this capacity. And then that's the one thing I would always advise my clients when I was in the marketing world. I'm like, how are you building community? And they'd be like, oh, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. But I'm like, until you have a community and until you've invested in the community that you're serving, don't expect anything back. why would a community come and trust you with their biggest problems if you have not served them at some point? And so that's my philosophy. There might be others out there, but that's my philosophy and the way that I approach things. And so I have built that into, typically other companies I've advised. That's the guidance I have given them. And then I'm certainly trying to follow that advice myself too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just kind of a final question that I like to ask everybody that's on the show is, if you were able to go back in time and have coffee with yourself before starting the company, what is the one piece of advice that you would give about the future?
The biggest thing I've learned through this process that I didn't understand at the beginning was how loud the naysayers would be. And people had told me that they would be loud, but the naysayers have been largely wrong. Just like the naysayers said a remote company could never make it, that a remote company could never be successful. How many unicorns do we have now that went public or that achieved billion-dollar status completely remotely? That was false. It was categorically false, and yet everybody was saying it in Silicon Valley. And so that's like exhibit A, the lies that you will be told by the naysayers, and there's a million more just like that one. And so I would have had coffee with myself back then and just said, you will be told, like, really smart people with Harvard MBAs and who worked at McKinsey are going to sit there and tell you that a remote startup could never make it. They're going to tell you that the healthcare industry will never open up its doors to you. They will tell you all of these things that they believe are indisputable truths, and all of them are untrue. So I would say, listen to your instincts, because they're right. My instincts and my co-founder's instincts have always been right. Like, listen to the instinct and just double down on it, because those people out there, even if they went to Harvard and worked at McKinsey forever, they actually do not know, because they've not walked in your shoes. They don't know the industry the way you do. They don't have the conversations you're having. So believe in it. Like, that's the number one thing I would tell myself.
That's awesome. Very cool, Rebecca. So before we sign off, where can our viewers go to find out more about you? And BOTCO.AI is pretty obvious, right? But, just
and the URL is right here.
Yep, URL.
In case you missed it.
That's great.
Sure. LinkedIn is my community in the sense of like where so Clubhouse and LinkedIn are where I hang out. So LinkedIn, I'm always posting. My team is always posting. We're interacting. I love to have rich conversations with other executives in my industry, in the startup community. That's where we kind of virtually hang out. I'm always posting comments and feedback and challenging people and all these things. And so that's probably one place. And then there are a couple of different Clubhouse chats that I participate in Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's one called HIT, Healthcare IT, which is what it stands for, girl, which I think is funny, hit like the girl. But it's actually a lot of men that join because they realize that that's where the really good ideas are happening. So it's not just for women. Please come, no matter what gender you identify with or don't identify with. Please join us. It's a very inclusive group of people, and we have some of the best conversations there. So those are a couple where you can find me. If you happen to be in Arizona, come say hello. It's beautiful out here. We can go on a hike and have a nice beverage outside because the weather is lovely.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us here today. Everybody go check out BOTCO.AI and connect with Rebecca. Again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great talking to you, Tony and Andy. Thank you so much for organizing this, and good luck to you too. Let me know if I can help with anything at any time.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. See you next week.